Hey there. So, welcome to our final part of nailing down an extra $1,000 a month in your trade-based business, and you don't need to do any more selling. Not no selling. Not at all. Just changing the way that we are going to be communicating and invoicing. And this is actually going to be the summary section. So if you've already seen the other ones, then there aren't going to be any real surprises here, but we're going to roll it up together for you in a nutshell. So if you have not seen the other ones, then you'll get the gist of it here. All right. So, 3 tips: charge for all your working time. So, remember, all of your working time. If you're defining working time, it should be any hour that you are working on something for your customer and not doing the other stuff you want to do. If you would rather be at your son's hockey game and you are, in fact, doing a material takeoff for a customer, you are making phone calls to suppliers, you're doing all of those other things, all of that is, in fact, office time that is chargeable. So charge for all of your time, not just, it's very tempting when you start out in the trades and you don't have like a big office and you don't have a big team, that you now you're charging your customer more than what you were being paid before. So in your mind, you're making money. But what happens is that the instinct is to only charge the customer when you have your boots on the ground. And that is where you don't make any money. That is the part where when you're an employee, yeah, you get paid for your boots on the ground time. But when it's your business, you're going to be consuming yourself with hours and hours of extra work where you are doing things specifically for the customer and not for yourself. And every one of those hours, you should be asking yourself, should I be charging my customer for this? And the answer to that, 9 times out of 10, is yes. Number 2, track your changes as they happen. So it is very tempting when something is like a minor change and you have an agreement to not track them. This one is super important. The number of times that I have seen contractors go into a job and they're like, oh, this one's going to be the big money maker. And what happens is that they get to the end of the job and suddenly there's not really any money there. And then they realize, oh, right, I forgot to charge for this. Oh, right, I forgot to charge for that. It's really difficult to go back to a customer after the final bill and say, yeah, I forgot about all of these things. It does not instill confidence in the customer that you have your act together. So if you are tracking those changes as they happen every single week, you are saying, these are the changes. This was the additional expense. This was the additional time every single week. Set aside some time to track them as they happen. And it doesn't have to be complicated. You can have like a little flip book from the dollar store, and every time you are performing work for a change, you pull it out, you write down some of the details, then you'll have notes to assist your memory later. So it doesn't have to be complicated, but do it as it happens. Write it down. And then the final one is going to be invoice weekly. Invoice every single week. There is value in sending a small invoice for a customer that catches a change. What it says to them is, oh, in this week, there were only $200 worth of changes. So then they actually go, oh, yeah, that's good because there wasn't a lot of extra changes. And so when you're using your invoice and you see it as a communication tool and not a request for payment, then the customer is more likely to feel confident. They know every week what's happening. They're not going to suddenly get surprised with a $10,000 invoice randomly. And it happens all the time, right? You have small changes, and those small changes over a period of time, they really add up, right? And if in your mind you're thinking, oh yeah, you know what, that's, I'm gonna get an extra 10 grand because I got all these changes. That's money in the bank. No, money in the bank is money in the bank. Tell the customer about the change. invoice them every week. If you make a change and you don't perform it this week, but you're doing it next week, put it in the notes and say next week we're adding, we're swapping out the vanity. It's going to be an extra $1,000. Then they know next week when you go back to the old invoice, you go, right, okay, we got to invoice them for that. So now now it's $200, $500, $1,000, whatever. And when the customer goes, oh my gosh, $10,000 worth of upgrades, you send them a statement which details all the bits and pieces, and they will suddenly say, wow. And the only reason why I know this detail is important is because when I was selling houses and we did all of the upgrades, we broke it down. We broke it down to the fancy light switch. So there was never, so when you had somebody and they were scrutinizing, they had all of the detail. And yeah, it took a lot up front to set up the detail, but then later on, when we were doing the summary for the customer, we never had a single house have a debate about upgrades at closing. And our lawyers could not figure out why. And you know why? Because we were communicating the details as we move through. They added something, we added it to the list, we sent them a revised version of the list. They were like, okay. So communicating and invoicing small amounts regularly and frequently is something that is a really, really great communication tool for people. It helps them manage their budget. It helps you all the way around. Invoicing weekly, I think it's a winner idea. So that's basically our 3 tips in a nutshell. I know there's a lot to unpack here. These are just these tips sort of at a high level. The kinds of bits that if I was chin wagging with somebody on the side of a basketball court and they're like, hey, what are you doing right now? I might have this conversation with them. But for a lot of people, knowing the what and the why isn't enough to kind of get going. So if you feel like you really need some help with your office and your businessy skills, check out jigsavvy.com. We are trying to make it as accessible as possible. So you'll notice a ton of mini courses. All our minis are under $50. So we're not trying to screw you over, but if you think, hey, there's one area I could really use some help, then definitely that's the place to go. So with respect to this course, there are 2 other courses that I think are probably you're going to find helpful. One of them is our Business Jigs Jumpstart program. It is, in fact, the basics. So you're going to bring us your business. We're going to brand you, and then we're going to walk you through all the basic office tools. So throughout this, I talk a lot about bills and invoicing. And so we're going to get into the details of that. And then we're even going to customize one, give it to you, and show you how to use it. So there's that. And then the other one is jumping ship. So if you are currently employed and you're thinking that you want to leave your employer and start a new business, this one's for you. This one's just a mini. So it's going to give you some lists of things that to decide, what you need to do, and what you need to learn before you make that leap and you suddenly are leaving your employer. So, like I said, I am Erica. I am at jigsavvy.com if you are looking for some stuff. And let's hope that you make some small changes and make some big money.